This is Matthew, host of the Superhero Ethics Podcast, and I've got an ethical question for you. If I'm trying to help you not listen to ads, is it ethical for me to do an ad to help you do that? If you go to our website, theethicalpanda.com, and just click on the join button, for $5 a month, $55 a year, you get to hear all of our episodes without ads. Was I ethical in doing this? Let me know. I don't know if there's wind blowing inside this studio. I don't know if you can watch us on YouTube in black and white, but we are here to discuss Spider-Noir, the new show that just dropped on Netflix about the Ben Reilly, one of the spider people who was introduced in the Spider-Verse movie, who's been a part of comics at various points. And here is in a live action Nicolas Cage 8-part gumshoe detective show set in the 1930s in a superhero kind of world. And I'm here with Will Freeland, one of our MCU experts from Hype is My Superpower. Will, how are you doing today? Tell people a little bit about yourself, because they probably haven't heard from you in a little while.
Hi, yeah, it's been a minute. Let's see. I am all over the internet as Silver Dreamer, SYLVER Dreamer. I love Marvel. I bleed Marvel. I read way too much Marvel. And it was gosh, yeah, whenever there's a Marvel property that comes out, Matthew and I see if we can cross paths and chip chat a little bit about it.
Yeah, definitely. You become you and your podcasting partner Steve have become two of my favorite Marvel guests, and especially with stuff like this, where like I think we've talked a lot about X-Men, we talked a lot about Spider-Man and things like that. And today we're diving into the Spider Universe. And many of you may have seen the show. We're going to spoil a lot of it, but even if you haven't, we're going to kind of keep you up to date, because I think there's some interesting questions both around the making of the show, but also within the show itself, because it is very much a hard-boiled detective. Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Not really clear. Everyone has their own kind of agenda kind of show of the kind that we really love and love to talk about. And so let me just kind of ask you to put on that Marvel expert hat. Who is Ben Reilly, Spider-Noir or Spider-Man Noir?
Man, so this is a little tough, because this is a brand new Spider-Noir. We conceptually, like, there's been a Spider-Noir in the comics, there's been the Spider-Noir in the Into the Spider-Verse animated movies, and then this is a third brand new take. So the Spider-Man Noir from the comics is Peter Parker in his timeline, and he gets bitten by a genetically altered spider that's from, like, I think it's from Oscorp. And and he does the holy goodness, I got spider powers and there's superhuman things going around the town that I need to deal with, that I feel like I should deal with, and so I'm gonna do this Spider-Man thing. Like, it's your classic kind of blend of Jessica Jones alias PI stuff and your typical Spider-Man Peter Parker story. Great power, great responsibility, that kind of stuff.
So it's noir in that it's like playing off of the film noir gumshoe detective kind of idea. It's not in black. Is it in black and white?
It is. So it's the late O's, like 2008, 2009. Marvel did this noir series with different characters. They did a Daredevil noir, they did a Luke Cage noir, they did Spider-Man noir, they did X-Men noir, and all of them were like 4-issue miniseries that were black and white, set in the early 30s, 1930s. Just a fun new take on Marvel kind of a thing.
Right. And there was a question of, like, does this fit into the I'm trying to find the number, the 618 or whatever it is.
616.
616. This wasn't supposed to fit it. This was supposed to be kind of like a what if, like a fun
yeah
kind of thing. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm. just its own thing, different Earth. This was
Uh-huh.
a little before they really got obsessed with multiverse stuff.
Right.
It's like Dan Slott on Spider-Man introduced the Spider-Verse storyline in like 2012, I think. And
Right.
so it was before this. You just have all these different versions of Spider-Man that are just out there. Like you have the Japanese TV Spider-Man that inspired the Power Rangers. You have Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara doing his stuff in the future. You have Peter Parker. You have Ultimate Spider-Man. Like it's just all these different versions of Spider-Man, all these
Right.
different TV shows, movies, blah, 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 blah. Dan Slott introduced the idea of the Spider-Verse, where we're going to get every single Spider-Man that's ever been on paper or
Right.
on screen, and we're going to throw them into one giant multiverse spanning storyline.
Right.
And that idea really took off. But
Yeah.
before that, it was just its own thing,
Right.
standalone, doing whatever.
And so in those comics, is Peter Parker still the high school / young adult, or is he the kind of 30s, 40s Sam Spade, down on his luck gumshoe detective that we associate a lot with the kind of film noir private eye that at least the Spider-Verse and now this show is referencing?
Yeah, no, he's always been the adult version
Yeah.
of Peter Parker.
Okay.
His coming of age, he figured out as a child, as a regular human.
Yeah.
He's very much aware of what it means to be an adult in the world of New York and blah 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 blah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of
Nice.
something. Admittedly, I didn't read the OG Spider-Noir stuff.
Okay.
That came out as I was getting into my big comic book renaissance for myself, and I'd asked my buddy who was manager at the comic store that I frequented. I was like, should I care about this noir stuff? Because more and more books are coming out. Like this is Luke Cage noir, and right at the time, Luke Cage was my second favorite hero, right behind Spider-Man. I was like, there's Luke Cage, there's Daredevil. Should I be checking this out? And he said, no, don't worry about it. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. So the first time I came across Spider-Man Noir was in the Spider-Verse stuff.
Right. Let's now talk about the Into the Spider-Verse stuff, as you just said.
Mm.
And I know there's some comics, but I mostly just want to talk about the movies because that's what I think a lot of people know, and probably how Spider-Man Noir came to kind of mass consciousness. And for those who haven't seen it or don't remember it, in that movie, Miles Morales as Spider-Man comes into contact with spider people from many different universes. And this is the kind of thing you were just talking about. And it involves Peter Porker, who's Spider Pig in a very kind of like, early Looney Tunes kind of style. The Japanese anime, little girl piloting a spider mecha, basically, that's driven by a tiny spider robot, or tiny spider that controls a robot. A couple of others, and one of them is Spider-Noir, Spider-Man Noir, who is played by Nicolas Cage in a very it's the private eye, but it's the spoof of the private eye, and his character is drawn in black and white, and the wind is always blowing in his character's world, and everything he says is sort of just if you imagine the most overblown purple prose kind of detective fiction of that time, that's who this character is.
Yeah.
And that one really took off, and so it sounds like though that the multiverse idea had already been brought in. Had that idea of that character being such a spoof been something in the comics, or is that really for the Spider-Verse movie?
No, I feel like that was very much for the movie. So Spider-Man Noir also, I feel like I need to mention this because someone in your comments is going to bring it up. But Spider-Man Noir was a playable character in Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, which was a four universe jumping Spider-Man story. And in that one, you basically play as just like stealthy. You play with the shadows. It's very Batman Arkham Asylum feel. And so in that version, he's serious. Like Spider-Man Noir was always just he's not a banter type. He's more serious and black and white about just the situation. but he's never been the like the parody of a PI type
Right.
thing. He does do the investigations and all that kind of stuff, but he's not like the joke character that he's portrayed as in Into the Spider-Verse.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I think that helps to better explain this TV show, which, and I wonder if this was the case for you. I always try to do now, went in completely blind. I didn't read any previews. I didn't watch any trailers. I just knew that there was a Spider-Noir movie, a Spider-Noir TV show, and it was starring Nicolas Cage, who's the voice of that character from Spider-Verse. So first I find out it's live action, which I thought it was going to be animated. And then I find out that it's a very different, I think there's still a lot of humor in it, but it feels like it's much more what you're talking about from the game and the comics than from the TV show, because it is much more like there's real drama. And I expected like there'd be some of that, but it is nowhere near as like having fun with the idea as much as it is a pretty straight shooting modern telling of a what if Spider-Man were, Sam Spade or some other like 1930s private detective. What was your take? Like, did you know that going in? Were you a little surprised as well that it wasn't more jokes about the wind and things like that?
I was honestly, I was expecting this to be a side story spin-off from the Spider-Verse movies. I fully expected this to be like set in between Into and Across, maybe, because he shows up at the end of Across the Spider-Verse, but he's not in Across. So like, what is he doing? And then at the very end, he's going to get pulled in. He's going to get scouted by Gwen and be like, hey, we got to go help Miles. So I was really happily surprised that this was very much its own thing.
Yeah.
And just playing off of the popularity of the named character, but doing its own thing for this storytelling. And I think that let them have more, for lack of a better phrase, fun with it. Being able to do whatever they wanted and not be constrained by like, well, Into the Spider-Verse, he did say this, so we should incorporate that. And yeah, it was fun. I was very happy with it.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I admit I was very thrown, and probably it took me an episode or so to get over my feeling of that character was so much fun. And granted, you can't just have him be making jokes about the wind. Like, you have to make him a developed character with a real show. But I felt like there was a way to do that. And I think it took me kind of till the end of the first episode. But then by that point, I was like, okay, this is now something I didn't know it was going to be, but this is pretty cool. I'm locked in. Let's go. And it sounds like you didn't even take that first episode. You were able to kind of quickly adjust to.
I was like, oh
yeah. So with all that, what'd you think of the show?
Oh man, I had a great time. I was surprised at how great of a time I had, honestly. I thought it was going to be campy. I thought it was going to be a lot more Into the Spider, because I don't think Spider-Noir from Into the Spider-Verse can carry his own show. I don't think he can be a main character. I
think it's possibly true, yeah.
And so, but this version that we got was just so much fun. And like, I love when you tell a story that's not an origin story.
Right.
So like, you don't have to do this hero's journey for the character because they've been through it, so they know what they're doing. So there's no like learning curve. It's just using the tools at hand to figure out the plot and the story that they're dealing with now. And that's why I think the Spider-Man PlayStation 5 game was so good, because he was already 8 years into being Spider-Man. And that's why I think this one, Spider-Noir, did better than I thought it was going to, because he's already been Spider-Man. That's already a thing. And so it's really just about Ben there was one scene where I should have gone back, but like he said, I don't use that name anymore. I go by Ben Reilly. And so like I don't think he's Ben Reilly by birth. I think I think this is still technically a Peter Parker, and
Right.
he's going by Ben Reilly. But it
What?
was like one throwaway line
Yeah.
in like episode 5. So I don't know if that's even a thing. But
Yeah, and I think it was kind of a nod to the Uncle Ben type thing. And in the Spider-Verse movie, he does reference Ben Reilly, who is his kind of
mhm.
his version of the Uncle Ben character. So yeah, I think it well could have been that. I think it also could have been that this is the guy who then that later Spider-Noir. But I think you're right. It kind of was like we're gonna sort of play into that but mostly not focus on it. And it actually did a really interesting twist on the great power comes great responsibility thing that we'll
Oh
talk
yeah,
about
they
in a
played that a
second.
couple of times. That was
Yeah.
cool.
That I liked how they kind of changed that up in a bit. And yeah, and I think I hear what you're saying about being glad that it wasn't a Spider origin story. I do think that now, as origin stories become a bit like we're kind of done with origin stories, I do think a new cliche is evolving of the pick the suit back up story, which is
Sure. Yeah.
and often this is the third movie in a trilogy, but now sometimes we're just starting with this of like, you're right, in the video game, he just is Spider-Man. In this, as I think in a lot of other properties recently, he's tried to retire. He was Spider-Man for a while. Something tragic happened. And a lot of the story is about, will he become Spider? I was gonna say in general, it's the Spider-Man again. And he's not Spider-Man Noir. He is Spider-Noir, but really he is the Spider. So it's will he become the Spider again? And I thought that was a bit of a cliche, but I liked it the way they did it because you're right. It doesn't have to be about the suit. It doesn't have to be about. There's one small gag about him breaking back into his old apartment to find the suit, but beyond that, it's not about that. It's not about how do I shoot webs. It's really just about the question of, do I want to be a hero or not? Do I want to use these powers or not? And am I actually doing good or not? And that's almost kind of where I want to start, because I think one thing that, like, a lot of times that becomes that they just ask that question once and they're done. I really like the way that this takes it, which is that he decides to become a hero mostly to save someone and to, he's a private eye. So of course he's got his sassy secretary who's really a secondary PI, and she gets recognized as that by the end of the show. But she gets threatened by this guy named Silvermane, who's the Irish crime boss of the city, played fantastically by Brandon Gleeson, just chewing scenery right, left, and center. And he threatens the secretary. The secretary's like, I can't do this. I love you, Ben, but I don't want to risk my life for you. And so he's like, okay, I'll put on the spider suit to put the fear of God into this man and tell him to leave me and my people alone. Or in his way to be, leave Ben Reilly and his people alone, because this is very much a secret identity Spider-Man. And what we find out is that by doing this, he gets to beat up this guy's henchmen. He gets to briefly dissuade the guy from causing that kind of harm, though he quickly goes back to it. But mostly, there was a police sting set up where Silvermane was going to get arrested and taken down, and he gets in the middle of that and screws it up. And so he's kind of left with, well, maybe it was the wrong idea to put on the suit, because what did it actually do? Look at the harm it caused. What was your take on that particular beat of the story and sort of how it played out?
Okay. So first part, I think I definitely agree that the do I pick up the suit storyline, I think it's done best as a third kind of movie, because it's like you need to connect with the character to like understand how big of a deal it is for them to pick it back up.
Right.
That said, the tidbits we get of Ben's struggle of like, listen, the world the city thinks I'm a hero, but like I never did it for that reason. I did it for one specific thing. I did it for the thrill. I did it for like the jollies it gave me.
Yeah.
I'm not a hero, but like, and so it's this this back and forth in his head of like, what is a hero? Can I be a hero? Should I be a hero?
Right.
Do I even want to be a hero? And like all of that stuff comes into play when the one time the first time in a long time he gets back in it, he screws up somebody else's operation because he's a solo player. So it's just like, well, I guess I'm not doing this. And that's classic anybody's story, right?
Yeah.
Like typical like men growing up being like, I'm gonna go and do this thing for my girlfriend, and then she didn't like
Right.
it or it screwed up, and he's like, well, I guess I'll never try again. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I'm gonna take my ball and go home.
yep. And you're just like, oh well, like don't let that deter you. And like as the supportive friend, yours is like, well, okay, that was one time. Let's reassess and see what happens.
Yeah.
And so like seeing something so relatable happen to a in a show like this was it pulled me in more.
Yeah.
I got really invested in seeing Ben. He's already accepted his powers, but then it's like, how does he use it? Why does he use it? And that was a really fun arc to
Yeah.
go with.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it is the hero origin story, because by the end of it, he has decided to become a hero and to be selfless and to use his power not only to help others, but in some ways to really kind of, put himself aside. And again, spoilers, but I will say this movie is many things. This show is many things. It was not terribly unpredictable, so I think it's not going to be, but like, because it all adds to the crescendo of. There's this thing of the femme fatale, and that he thinks that she's in love with him and they're going to run away, but it turns out she's really kind of using him to get his help to rescue the person who she's in love with. And he kind of does the Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, it's a far better thing. That's the wrong quote, but like, helping the two of them to be together while he kind of goes off by himself. And I really like that, because you're right. It to me, it's not the origin of a hero in terms of I would do good if I had this power, but now I have this power. It's really a discussion of what do I do with this power? And I think one thing that really helps it is they do this fascinating origin story. And let me actually just start you here. The origin story is that a group of men who were all soldiers in the American Army in World War I come across this German camp where where basically like the Germans have kind of created a way to make super soldiers that have superpowers. And the Americans who liberate this area all get exposed in some way or another. And so, for example, there's this like straight out of a horror movie, like half spider, half person who bites Ben Reilly, and that's how he becomes one. Let me just ask before I get to the main point. Is that idea of the Spider-Noir origin in World War I and tied up with the PTSD of that war, is that something that we've seen before?
No.
Yeah.
That was totally different. Well, it's brand new to me. I can't like put money down and say that no Spider-Man has ever had this origin before. But I strongly believe that no Spider-Noir has ever had this origin.
Yeah. And I did some digging, and part of that was talking to Jessica Plummer, who's our real sort of history of comic books expert, and also just some of my own digging into comic book history. In the 1930s, as a part of just the huge number of, noir detective novels and movies and things like that, there were detective comic books. That DC Detective Comics comes from that.
Yeah.
And Batman was the idea of like one more hard-bitten, tough streets PI, but he has a bat thing. And none of them went into this idea because they were pulp. They were, it's the 1930s. Right. Mm-hmm. The language of PTSD, you might have said shell-shocked, but you certainly weren't going to talk about that in a comic book. But, and I had never really thought about this before, but it makes sense. Part of the idea of why so many of these men are cynical and broken and having real trouble with things is because probably a lot of them were in World War I and got really screwed up by it, shell-shocked and all that. And I'd never put that together, but I loved how they did that in this.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Are we doing spoilers on that part yet?
Yeah, no, we're doing spoilers for the whole show.
Okay, cool. So, I thought that the reason why Ben was stable, like genetically stable, I thought it was because he was like a second generation, air quote.
Right.
Because, you know, they did the experiment on one guy, he became half spider mutant type thing, and then he bit Ben, and so Ben was like a second dose, a diluted dose. I thought that's why he was stable, not because Ben was just genetically special.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. That could be it. Because
But
again,
they didn't do that. So
yeah, because it's not really clear how the others got it. They didn't like necessarily get bitten as well. But one of the ideas is that Ben Reilly is one of the only ones who is. A lot of the others are having massive anger issues. A lot of the kind of PTSD plot, what we think of now as PTSD, which by no means means violent, but can in very specific cases. But you know, I don't want to play into the stereotype of people with PTSD, but like that is a thing that can happen on the edges, like with a lot of other things. But they're much more unstable than Ben is. They're much more likely to have anger control issues and impulse control issues, as well as eventually to die. That it's going to kill them.
And Ben's PTSD was his alcoholism and his self-destruction as the spider.
Right.
Like they didn't specifically kind of say that, but like if you look at it with a lens of PTSD shell shock, and self-destructive behavior, that's very much how Ben looked at being the spider. Was like, I'm just going to go out there and get punched in the face voluntarily, and maybe I'll do some good at the same time.
Right. And like you said, it's to get the thrill, and it's that like, you know, I need combat again, and in a sort of like, it felt like they weren't trying to do Easter eggs, but they were trying to say, we know this is a Spider-Man story, and we're not ignoring that. Part of the thing is that he has a girlfriend who died because she got killed. And this part is a very cliche of detective noir. He had a woman who he thought he could protect from his, you know, main nemesis. He couldn't, in part because of his drinking and all this other stuff. So that's very much the detective thing. But what's her name? Gwen. Which I only caught it. Like, I think I only said it once or twice, but I had a moment of like, okay. Hey. That's because, you know, Spider-Man has Gwen Stacy, who often dies. And I just thought that was such a brilliant way of being like, we're mostly telling you the detective cliche, but don't worry, there's a little of that Spider-Man DNA rattling around in here.
Yeah, God, it was, I loved, it was just so much fun. I had such a great time for the most part watching this, and I loved the antagonists and the powers that they do, and like you gotta love a Sandman.
Well, and that's where I was building to with the whole World War I thing. I really liked that they had Silvermane was pretty clearly the main antagonist. And he's the crime boss. He's the kingpin. He does not have superpowers, but he's manipulating all these people with superpowers to work for him. But beyond him, everyone else in that movie is a person who has pretty mixed motivations. And they're often antagonists to Ben, but in the same way that Ben didn't start out doing things for the most heroic of reasons, these folks are often like, you know, some of them are some of the veterans who aren't getting paid properly and are black and are being treated pretty badly. And they're using some of their powers to fight back against that. And the guy who's Sandman, he's in love. He's the one who's in love with our femme fatale character, Cat Hardy. And he works for Silvermane for a while, but his point always is to try and protect his woman, to try to protect Cat. And when he realizes how Silvermane is taking advantage of that, and that Cat's been doing all this to help get him out, he switches sides. And even some of the others, like, I never felt they were evil. You know, I always felt like I could understand where they were coming from, even if I could see that they were antagonists to Ben in the story. How did you kind of feel about the way they were portrayed? As like they were rogues maybe, but they definitely were not like, I'd have trouble calling any of them like straight up villains.
Sure. Yeah. And like just as a like storytelling movie, TV show overarching theme, I feel like there's very few just straight villains anymore. And it's always a contention of principle of just like, hey, th- you have this problem. Here's one way to deal with it, and it involves a lot of death. And here's another way to deal with it, and it doesn't entirely solve the problem, but it saves the most lives. And like that's kind of always
Yeah.
kind of thing. And but I think one of the benefits to doing that is it means you don't have to kill off the villain
Yeah.
by the end, and so you can have recurring antagonists,
Right.
as long as they're not like your Joker or your Thanos,
Yeah.
where all they care about is just the full death of
Yeah.
anything and everything. And yeah, having their, I found it very um, entertainingly convenient that everybody's motivations just, if you twist the perspective on what they're doing and what they're looking for, you can have them team up or like,
Yeah.
hey, listen, I this is my situation, this is my problem. I'm able to sustain myself by working for Silvermane.
Yeah.
So just let me do that. Unless you're going to go and change the world, let me have this so I can keep living till tomorrow.
Yeah.
um,
Exactly.
it was very well done. I was very happy with it.
And especially because it's really told against the story of desperation of, they're all
Mhm.
dealing with a Silverman guy, the mayor is corrupt and all that, and the police are corrupt, and it's the 1930s, and it's the Depression, everyone's hungry, and everyone's trying to figure out where their next meal is gonna come from.
Mhm.
And I wanna talk about the powered people, but let's talk about Kat for a second, the femme fatale, because I actually didn't realize this until I looked it up. Kat Hardy, who is played by Lee Jun Lee, who is just fantastic in this role. I thought she was a character made up for this. And
Mm.
certainly they don't in any way indicate that this character is going to become a powered person at some point. But what I've learned is that, as I'm sure a lot of my listeners are yelling at the screen, telling me, of course, you should have known this. Kat Hardy, Felicity Hardy is the sort of actual name of Black Cat.
Yeah,
And
Felicia.
so
Yeah.
Felicia, not Felicity. So yeah, talk about that. I assume you probably clocked that a lot. You clocked that the way I didn't. What did you think of this take on that character?
Oh, it's so much fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, my fanship is Peter Parker and Felicia Hardy.
yeah,
I love the two of them together. And for those who don't know Black Cat or who she's literally Catwoman to Batman.
yeah.
Black Cat to Spider-Man.
Morally
That's all you
ambiguous,
really need to know.
sometimes villain, sometimes helping him, always
Yeah.
flirting with him, always
Cat burglar flirts with Spider-Man, ends up learning who Spider-Man is, flirts with Pete in front of Mary Jane, like
uh-huh.
yada yada yada. So cat burglar, Black Cat, Felicia Hardy, cat burglar. She has like an implant that creates bad luck for people that she perceives as enemies. Don't ask how it works because it's
Comic
just
book magic, man. Comic book magic. Well, and in the
and she
comics,
is
oh, go ahead.
fantastic. Sorry.
In the comics or other portrayals, is the idea that her alter ego is kind of a banshee, like, lounge singer, connected with the mob, femme fatale type, or is that something they really put in for this?
So no, that's not how she is portrayed in the comics. However, that is exactly how she would be portrayed in the 1930s. In a
Yeah,
noir style story, that's the perfect casting for a
yeah,
Black Cat.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought it really worked, and like, and what I liked is that my not knowing that, I don't think I still was able to really enjoy the character and love what they
Right.
did with her, but then now knowing it adds kind of a fun little wrinkle. And so let's talk about her role in this because, and I think this is again kind of a more modern twist on the femme fatale idea, but and I think a more feminist one, but so it's not just like she's just the object of desire. But there's really kind of an arc that she has, and this is my interpretation of it, and tell me if you think this is accurate. We start off with her very clearly wanting to save Flint, the guy who's become Sandman. And we don't know if he's going to be saved. And when it seems like he is either unsavable because he's become a villain, he's been bad to her, I think he hits her. And there's some level of this, like, is it him? Is it the anger, etc.? And that gets into a much more complicated issue. But he treats her badly. She kind of gives up on him. At least what she shows to Ben is, I'm over him, but I still need you. Well, first she hires Ben to help rescue him. There's all sorts of shenanigans. Eventually she hires Ben to help protect her. And then she starts flirting with Ben. And they make out a few times. And she and Ben start planning this idea that they're going to, like, sort of pull one over on Silvermane, get out from under, and have enough money to run away to French Polynesia, or to, you know, some island somewhere in the Mediterranean or the Pacific or something like that. And eventually it becomes revealed that she still has always been trying to save Flint, that she tries to save Flint in part by betraying Ben and telling his secret identity to Silvermane, which gets him and everyone else in a lot of trouble. And Ben feels very betrayed and angered by that. And I think there's a way you could have told this story as though it was, look at this terrible woman who's willing to seduce men right and left in order to get her way. And my feeling was that they had a very different play on it, because she also flirts with Silvermane a lot, and he thinks that she really loves it. And my sense is that the story is actually telling is, this is a woman who in this time and place, every man expects that all she is the romantic ideal, the sexual ideal, that they can't conceive that she might be faking romantic interest, because that's the only way she can survive, let alone get these guys to do what she wants. And so they all feel kind of betrayed when they realize, no, she was playing you because you underestimated her, because you saw her as just the femme fatale. And at the end, Ben kind of, like, grudgingly accepts that, even though he's still angry about it.
Yeah.
Does that feel accurate to you?
Yeah, I think that's a plot you can only tell in a 1920s, 1930s setting.
Yeah.
I think if this were set in the 21st century, I think they would have played up her sexualization a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would have been less well written and received.
Yeah.
I think I agree. It fits in this time frame of, you know, the early 20th century, where women were seen as tools by most men, and not actual people. And so there's this blatant non-sexualized objectification of Kat that again only works in this setting.
Yeah.
And the way that they wrote Kat as she played so well this character that follows her feelings and feels for everyone she ends up getting close to, but is able to air quotes play her role
right
to the man that she's talking to at the time, like in the scene. But you see how she where her heart lies, and like in comparison, you know, how she acts with Silvermane, where she's clearly just playing the role for him, and he doesn't see it. He's just like, yeah, that makes sense. That's my girl. Cool. Moving on.
Yeah.
Where the way that she fell or could see herself falling for Ben, it's very much a like, man, if Flint wasn't here, Ben would be the perfect man for me.
Yeah.
And so she, when she's not around Flint, she sees Ben and she's like, there is a future here. There could be a future here. I'm gonna see where this goes. But then every time Flint comes back and she realizes where her true feelings lie, then she's back with focusing on, and anyone who's been in the dating game and has spent any amount of time single as an adult, where you're like trying to figure out where you can who you can date and how it's going to work out, gets it.
I think so.
So that was a fan,
especially because it's not just a when Flint is around, it's that there really is this duality of Flint, and I think there's a real sense of like, is the man that I knew as Flint gone, that I loved, is he still here, or is he just this different person now because of the powers? And he does treat her pretty badly. And here again, I think you're right. This is a story that only kind of works in this time period. And I'll also say, you and I are both male presenting people who, and so if women what I'm about to say, if women fans of mine disagree, please let me know.
Yeah.
But I feel like the story that they're telling could very easily fall into a very bad direction of, oh, it's not him when he hits me. It's not him when he cheats on me. I can fix him. And I feel like in part because of the 1930s aspect of it, and just kind of the cliches they're playing with, and the fact that we know like it is a specific like condition that he's dealing with, in part because there's kind of subplot of a doctor who's trying to heal them, but kind of makes it worse. And that kind of like amplifies it. So there is really this like outside influence that is making them more violent, making them more emotionally unstable, that I think is meant to be like, we're not talking about, just people who have mental problems and are lashing out at others and stuff like that. We're trying to talk about something different here. But yeah, I think it Ben jumping to see her as just being manipulative, I think is both understandable, but we're also supposed to understand, you're right, that it's not. And that it's a little sad, but I think very telling that at the end, she tries to say that. She tries to say, I want you to know I was thinking really about running away with you. And if it wasn't that Flint truly came back to me, and he comes back in part because, the MacGuffin of all this is there's an antidote that takes away all your superpowers. Ben's going to use it on himself. We get down to only one last dose because of course we do. And he gives it to Flint when Flint is, in danger of like not, needs this really to live and to be able to be the person that she can love again. So he kind of basically, so it's a kind of like Ben's sacrifice is to make his romantic rival whole again. And she says, I want, I would have been able to be with you. And he says, go to hell. And he's kind of angry at her. And part of me didn't want that, but it also felt real. It also felt like,
yes,
I think on some level he will eventually understand and believe that. But right now it's easier for him to be angry at her and easier for him to feel betrayed. And even if you can let go of the what her feelings were for him, she did betray his secret identity to the big bad and almost get him killed.
Exactly.
So there is I think that's why I love it so much. Is it feels like there's so much I can't put any of these characters into a simple black and white, which is funny because he's in black and white, but everything is gray. Everything is morally complex. No one is clearly a good guy or a bad guy except maybe Silvermane.
Yeah. And I think that whole plot line for Kat is only believable because it was portrayed so well and convincingly by Lee Jun Lee.
Oh, she's amazing.
Just if there was ever if there ever looked like there was a moment where you couldn't see the emotion in her eyes, and if there was ever any lack of conviction in when she was saying to Ben, I totally would have, or when she is reminding Flint how much that she loves him and that no matter what, we're going to figure this out until it's too late. And if there was ever a scene where she didn't sell it, it would have fallen apart. The entire plot line would have fallen apart. But she did such a great job just playing that Kat character. So it was so much. It was great.
Yeah, I loved it. So let's talk about then some of the other powered people, the other antagonists. We have Flint is Sandman, clearly, and There's another guy named, I think they give him a different nickname, but he's basically the Electro of this world, and he becomes kind of the main antagonist in terms of people who are fighting against.
Yeah, Megawatt. So Megawatt is a character.
Oh, he's distinct from Electro.
Yeah, just he's like a Z-list character that no one knows. He's from God, I want to say it's like the 60s or 70s. It's an old character that hasn't been around for a bit. But actually, I want to say Megawatt just got put on West Coast Avengers for a little bit. I think that's him. And he's trying the hero thing. Anyway, Johnny Watt is the one I'm thinking of, but I don't know if that's who Megawatt was in this one.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, so he is a character, electricity-based powers. Dime a dozen. There's 2 Electros, like pull any pull any electric-based character. But yeah, having someone who is naturally incredibly violent and give them a walking taser is a hell of a villain to throw in. And I think and we talked about this way back when we were doing Falcon and Winter Soldier, how it was hard to not side with the Flag Smashers until you get to that point in episode 6 or whatever where the Flag Smashers actually start killing people. Like to clearly define the line between a good and a bad person, you need a Megawatt to continually cross that line,
right?
To be like, oh wait, you guys need to be stopped.
Yeah,
because if you have your Lonnie Lincoln and your Flint Marco, who are just tragic stories that are just trying to get by, it's harder to root for Noir, for Spider, until Megawatt shows up, and he always takes it too far.
Yeah, and it's nice the way they do that, in part because I think the idea is that Megawatt, the guy who is, he was like this before his powers manifested. He was just
exactly.
He went to war to be a bully. He was a bully afterwards, and there's even a moment where Silvermane tells him, like, you've got to learn to control your impulses, and not to go in a completely different direction, but to me, like, if you take Silverman and Megawatt in this, I think you have lawful evil and chaotic evil. Like, Silvermane is very much like the mob boss, and he's just like random destruction.
Yeah.
And we've talked a good deal about Flint. Let's talk about the other one, about Lincoln, because he was also a character who I thought was really fascinating, where his powers start to develop really where he is a veteran who's fighting to get his benefits. They do some kind of interesting things with race in this that I don't really feel qualified to talk too much about, but just kind of acknowledging that, like, on the one hand, there's a lot of black characters who have a lot of roles in this world that I don't think necessarily would have made sense
realistic
in the real world.
Yep.
But also they do talk about racism that they're dealing with, and this character certainly is. And Lincoln, I feel like, is he supposed to be kind of like the lizard man? Because he gets kind of like lizard scales on him.
Yeah, I think they just made him a little more monstrous. Because so Lonnie Lincoln, originally he's a black man with albinism, and he has like indestructible skin. He's like a bad guy, Luke Cage.
Okay,
he's Luke Cage gangster. He's got indestructible skin. He's ground his teeth to points, and his name is Tombstone. Like, his gangster name is Tombstone.
Oh, okay, that's weird.
He was in he was a side boss in Spider-Man 2018, the video game. He was a supporting character in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man on Disney Plus. He's been used a lot more in the last like decade. He was also a heavy player in I don't want to say it's Joe Kelly. Might have been in Nick Spencer's run of Spider-Man. That was
nice.
A few years ago. But I think that's wrong. I think it was the person actress, Nick Spencer. Doesn't matter. Lonnie Lincoln, Tombstone. He is air quotes he's another like mafia level Dawn type character. and historically black man albinism. In Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, black man gets a power and it starts manifesting, and his skin turns white. It's almost like a vitiligo
Right.
thing. Whereas here they gave him like the more lizard kind of look, more of a monster look, and I think that's more of a play on the fact that it's a black and white, and so if you're watching in black and white, you got to make it more distinct that his power is manifesting and becoming a problem for him.
Right.
And I've never seen Tombstone portrayed monstrously like that. That was new for noir.
Well, and it's interesting because he's both the physical presentation is monstrous, but the character portrayal, like I said, is I think even before Marco, before Sandman, he's probably the first to start to say, wait a minute, I kind of got wrapped up with Silvermane because the cops are after me and all this kind of stuff, but like this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like I think he's one of the most of the morally gray, I'm not really sure this is what we're supposed to be doing thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. His, like in the comics, he has a daughter who's a villain, and so there's like family dynamics involved, and like he always shows restraint until his daughter is in trouble. And as far as most Spider-Man villains or antagonists, I should say, can be talked back from the edge. They tend to have at least one or two storylines where they do a team up to support Spider-Man and doing something. Lonnie is one of the more frequent characters that does that.
I can see that.
In that last Spider-Man run, Lonnie's daughter is engaged to Joe Robertson's son. And so they have a lot of history together, just from Joe Robertson being at the Daily Bugle and outing Tombstone's operations and stuff. So they have an antagonistic relationship in the comics, but they keep on coming to the table because their kids are involved.
I like it.
And so so having two black characters doing anything of importance in the 1930s blows my mind. I don't see a newspaper of any stature bringing on a black investigator, but you know what? Fine, whatever. It's totally fine. And so I was going to complain about that, about Lamorne playing Joe Robertson, because Joe Robertson's black in the comics too, but
well, and this is Robert Robertson, but yeah, it's the same character clearly.
Robbie Robertson. So his name is Joe Robertson, but he goes by Robbie.
Okay, so same guy.
Yeah. And so my complaint was just, there's no way that a black man would be doing this in the early 1900s. That doesn't make sense to me. And then it was like episode 3, I think, where they have some of the conversations about a black man and what they're going through with the VA and over at the park and getting their rations and that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, so they'll touch on it, but that's obvious. It's not a plot point. So like you don't need to spend too much time on it, but I just appreciate that it was acknowledged.
No, I hear you. Well, I feel like there's so much more we can go into about this. I will say, I mean, this isn't a critique show, but I'll say it was not my favorite of the Marvel shows. I think it felt like it dragged a little bit in the middle episodes, but I really did like when I look back on it, I feel like I really liked the overall story and the things that it had to say. Is there any other of these last things or a character you want to touch on, or I want to comment quickly on the black and whiteness, but I'll give you a chance to say any last things you want to say.
I had a good time. I Janet, the secretary, she was fantastic. I think people will be happily surprised by this show, and I recommend checking it out.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially even if you're going in blind, if you know nothing other than like, oh, you watched Into the Spider-Verse, you didn't even watch Across the Spider-Verse or anything like that, just check it
Yeah.
out. Nick Cage, I feel like for a romance story, I feel like Nick Cage is a little old, but
Yeah.
that's nitpicky. It's not a big deal. We'll just chalk it up to having those powers ages you anyway, because there's a character whose entire plot line is he got infected at the POW camp and he rapidly ages now. So like just let it be.
There's ways to make it work, you know? Yeah, I had kind of a similar feeling, and I think it also, to me, it also played into a little bit the idea that like him taking her seriously as a romantic option was like he maybe should have realized like maybe she's not that into you. But yeah, to me, I feel like early on, and understandably, like you're asking Nicolas Cage to play a different version of a character that he got a lot of public acclaim and kind of came back into the public eye in some ways for. And I feel like the first couple episodes, he's still wrestling a bit with like which one is he playing, but he definitely nails it by the end, and I liked it a lot. The last thing I'll just say, did you watch it in black and white or in color?
Black and white, of course.
I switched back and forth a little bit and quickly established, like by the end of the first episode, I was like, no, I'm just doing this in black and white. And I thought the way it is so perfect for it, especially because it looks like one of those, but they're so clearly using the modern technology. And one thing that we had happen a lot was they spent a lot of time in darkened rooms where the drapes on the windows are mostly closed or the blinds are, but there's a couple of sunbeams coming through. And you would just, once you start noticing it, you can't stop. The way those sunbeams were just kind of shining through and so clear in a way they would never be in color, I thought was just so powerful and so really like, to me, it really hinted at this idea of like, they're all in this incredibly gray world where they're striving for the light and they're trying to get to the light, but they're not there yet. And I just thought it was so beautiful and so well shot.
Absolutely. So when I thought this was going to be Spider-Noir from Into the Spider-Verse, when Into the Spider-Verse ended, he took that color Rubik's Cube back with him.
Yeah.
And so I thought that this is going to, so that implies, right, that in the noir verse, everything is black and white because he was so confounded by this little colorful thing. Yeah. And so I thought that this was going to be a world that's black and white, and he was going to have this little pop of color. And in my head, when he was struggling with motivation or like the why of it all, he was going to open up this drawer and see this little pop of color, and it's going to remind him that there's so much more out there to like live for and to discover, that's going to reinvigorate him to go out and do the hard thing. But that's nowhere near what happened. And so I can't imagine this would be the first Spider-Noir in, that's a lie, it'd be the second Spider-Noir in color. There's a Spider-Noir story that came out like 4 years ago. It was a miniseries, and that one's in color. But like the old Marvel Noir story miniseries were all black and white. The Shattered Dimensions Spider-Noir game levels were black and white. Spider-Noir in Into the Spider-Verse is black and white, and his world is black and white. I can't even fathom voluntarily watching Spider-Noir on Amazon Prime in color. That's crazy.
No, I hear you. I when I heard that it like is both black and white and color, couldn't hear that you could switch. I thought that it was gonna be a story about like the Rubik Cube kind of bringing color into his universe,
right?
And how crazy like. And there was a movie from like our childhood, I think called like Pleasantville or something like that. That was about something similar. You remember? So I thought, so anyway, that's not the movie we got, but it was still fun. It was still a fun TV show. Will, thank you as always so much for coming on and doing this. Where can people find more of your stuff?
The easiest answer is silverdreamer.com. I have links on there to every other social media that I'm on, like, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Twitch, everywhere, man. Right now, Hype is My Superpower is on a pause. We're going to be coming out with volume 2 down the line. We're going to come up with a better system than what we had before.
Nice.
But I am still always reading comics. I love talking about them. We do deep dives on Twitch pretty frequently, where basically we'll be doing something like this as a channel point redeem, and it's been a lot of fun. So yeah.
If you're on the YouTube watching this, or if you want to go on YouTube, you will see all the incredible like Lego creations that Will has and other things like that. He does a lot of that on his stream. Definitely worth checking out. So on behalf of myself and Will, thank you all for listening. Of course, please check out all the other different podcasts I do. Marvel Minute I've been on, Star Wars Generations podcast. This is the other one I host. But having Will and myself, thank you all so much for tuning in. We have spoken.
We have spoken.
This is the way.